I never imagined that a routine visit to the hospital would turn into a nightmare. When my daughter fell dangerously ill, Nurse Karen refuses to give her medicine 'cause she's just faking it. Here's how it all went down. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where the very person meant to provide care and comfort would become the source of my worst nightmare. It all started on a chilly Thursday morning when my daughter, Lily, woke up with a high fever and a persistent cough. I knew something was wrong, so I rushed her to the local hospital. That's where we met Karen, the nurse who turned our lives upside down. The hospital was bustling with activity, but it seemed to slow down the moment we met Nurse Karen. She was in her late 40s with a stern face that looked like it hadn't smiled in years. From the get-go, Karen was dismissive. "Another overreacting parent, I suppose," she muttered under her breath as she led us to a room. I tried to explain Lily's symptoms, but Karen barely listened. "Kids get colds all the time. She'll be fine," she said, barely glancing at Lily. As the hours passed, Lily's condition worsened. Her fever spiked, and she started having difficulty breathing. I was frantic, begging Karen to do something, but she just rolled her eyes. "Look, I've been a nurse for over 20 years. I know a drama queen when I see one. She's just seeking attention," Karen said, her voice dripping with disdain. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "My kid is dying!" I shouted, my voice echoing through the halls. Karen scoffed. "Ew, she's just faking it. I've seen real sick kids. She's not one of them." Her words were like a slap in the face. How could a nurse be so heartless? I demanded to see a doctor, but Karen blocked my way. "You're just going to clog up the system for a child who's clearly fine. Sit down and let me handle the real emergencies," she said, pointing to a chair. Then Lily started convulsing. Her little body shook uncontrollably, and she gasped for air. It was the most terrifying moment of my life. "Help her, please!" I screamed, tears streaming down my face. Karen finally looked alarmed, but still hesitated. "Well, maybe she's not faking," she muttered, finally calling for a doctor. The medical team rushed in, pushing past Karen. They worked on Lily, giving her the medication she desperately needed. I watched, feeling a mix of relief and anger. Relief that my daughter was finally getting help, and anger at Karen for her negligence. The doctors managed to stabilize Lily, explaining that she had a severe respiratory infection that had quickly escalated. They were baffled as to why she hadn't received treatment sooner. I glared at Karen, who stood in the corner, her face void of the smugness it had held earlier. "You almost let my child die," I said, my voice cold. Karen didn't respond, just turned and walked away. I was told later that she was suspended pending an investigation. It was a small comfort, but my focus was on Lily's recovery. Lily spent a week in the hospital, slowly getting better. The doctors were kind and attentive, a stark contrast to Karen's callousness. As we left the hospital, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Relief that my daughter was okay, but a lingering anger and disbelief at the cruelty of one nurse. I shared our story online, not for sympathy, but as a warning. I titled it, "Karen Nurse Refuses to Give Medicine to My Dying Kid 'Cause She's Just Faking It." The response was overwhelming, with many sharing their own stories of medical negligence. As for Karen, I heard she was eventually fired. Some said she deserved it. Others argued she was just a product of a stressful healthcare system. But to me, she was a reminder of how one person's apathy and arrogance could have cost my daughter her life. I hugged Lily a little tighter that night, grateful for her recovery but haunted by the what-ifs. Karen's face, twisted in disdain, would forever be etched in my memory, a chilling reminder of the day my world almost shattered. That's absolutely horrifying. I can't believe someone in the medical profession could be so heartless and negligent. Poor Lily and her mom went through such a traumatic experience, sending love and healing vibes to them. Thank goodness the doctors were able to step in and save her. This story is a chilling reminder of the importance of compassion and empathy in healthcare. Stay strong, Lily and her mom. I thought I had it all. A loving wife, 3 beautiful daughters, and a seemingly happy family. But behind closed doors, the facade crumbled, revealing a world of neglect, indifference, and secrets. As I spiraled into despair, questioning my place in their lives, a series of unexpected events unfolded. Here's how it all went down. I have been married for 15 years. I have known my wife since I was 8. We have 3 daughters together, aged 17, 14, and 11. I'm tired of feeling like I'm an outsider in my relationships with all of them. I'm just an ATM and taxi service to my kids. My wife hasn't kissed me in 6 months. She has not said that she loves me in 1.5 years. No matter how much I communicate, try to plan anything, or do anything, it is always shot down, forgotten, or dismissed. I don't get angry, I don't yell, and I don't get physical. I like to splurge during birthdays and Mother's Day. I throw parties and give gifts to try to show how much I love them. I get a lukewarm thanks, and if I'm lucky, a side hug that lasts for a fraction of a second. This week was the breaking point. On Father's Day, I wake up to an empty house. It was odd. No note, nothing was written on the calendar, and nothing was said beforehand. I send a text, and I get back, I took the girls out for a spa day, don't wait up. Then nothing, literally nothing. Dinner time comes around and they get home. I ask how their day was, and it was fine. I ask what they would like for dinner, and they say, nothing, we already ate at one of my favorite restaurants. Cool, whatever. There is no mention of it being Father's Day. No I love you, no how are you, nothing. Fast forward to Wednesday, which was my birthday. Nothing. Literally again, nothing. I suggested plans, but they were shot down. I suggested getting food, but that was also rejected. I asked about watching a movie, but everyone was too busy on their phones doing nothing. Now let's move on to Thursday night. I'm in bed and my wife is next to me. She rolls over and says in a crappy tone, "Oh, your birthday was the other day. I guess you expect to have sex." That broke something inside me. To the best of my memory of how it went down, I replied, "No, I don't expect sex. At this point, I don't expect anything anymore." She asked, "What's that supposed to mean?" So, I started asking her questions. When was the last time we shared a kiss? Like a week ago? No, it was in December during her parents' holiday party. When was the last time we had sex? The beginning of the year? No, it has been over a year. She insisted that we did it in February, but I was dealing with my mom's health and her passing. So I said something like, "You may have had sex, but it wasn't with me." When was the last time you said you love me? I say it all the time. Not to me. Check your messages. You don't say it to me face to face. Well, you should just know I do. When was the last time we went on a date? Long pause. She responded, "You're being unfair." My emotions were fully turned on. I was crying and raising my voice at this point. I asked her how I was being unfair. She couldn't answer. I asked her how wanting any sign of love from anyone in the house was unfair, if expecting anything for my birthday or Father's Day was unfair. She had an oh shit look. Yeah, she had forgotten about Father's Day as well. I'm not an ATM, I'm not a taxi service, I'm not a punching bag. She asked why this was coming up out of the blue. It didn't. I have tried to talk to my family and again get dismissed or ignored. I gave examples. I got an, "I didn't know you were serious. I didn't know it was such a big deal." I left by saying something like, "If you want to pretend that I'm invisible and don't exist, fine. You don't have to pretend anymore." I left the house almost at midnight on Thursday, Friday morning, and haven't been home since. I'm not sure what to do now. I'm finally sober enough to think, but I don't know what to do. By the way, it's the first time I've been drinking in over 15 years, and I'm not going to drink anymore. I love my family, but I can't keep this up. I don't know what more I can do. I think they would be happier without me. They already act like I don't exist. I can't be the one who is blamed for everything. If I truly am the problem, then me not being there should fix it. I can't do it anymore. I have received only one message from my wife. "I'm sorry for making you feel that way. We all love you, and we are here for you when you want to come home and talk." That's it. No other messages. No calls. Nothing from the kids. I feel like if they really wanted me there, they would try reaching out more. All of the kids have their own phone. I don't know what she told them. I'm sure they heard me raise my voice. Me raising my voice would have definitely got their attention since I never do. I'm sure they heard me leave. I just don't know. I reached out for help through my workplace, which offers resources for therapy and legal counsel. Unfortunately, my boss discovered my efforts and has been persistently interfering, but that is not the focus here. I believe she has good intentions. Fortunately, I was able to schedule an appointment with a therapist relatively quickly, despite my initial expectation of a long wait list. The therapist recommended a family spousal therapist who specializes in individual counseling. I had a discussion with this therapist as well. I was also referred to divorce lawyers. Although I am hesitant to pursue that route, I spoke with them to gain an understanding of the process. It seems that I may face challenges, but since we live in an at-fault state, if it turns out that my spouse is cheating, it might work in my favor. After a few days, my children reached out, expressing their concern. I reassured them that I am fine and that I love and miss them. However, I explained that I needed some space and time. For the first time ever, I missed some of their extracurricular activities, which made them realize that something was seriously wrong. Other family members and so-called friends also noticed and started asking questions. My kids mentioned how things were not the same without me and how my wife was struggling. My wife reached out to me several times, checking in, apologizing, providing updates, and even asking about our usual 4th of July party, BBQ. I declined her invitation, but I insisted that we needed to have a private conversation in person. This conversation took place the weekend after the 4th. To my surprise, my wife brought the kids along when we met. I was happy to see them, and they seemed happy to see me too. However, I requested to speak alone with my wife. When I pointed this out, She insisted that the kids should be present because they missed me. I believe this was a manipulative move on her part. During our conversation, I expressed how my feelings and desires have been consistently ignored and dismissed. I highlighted that I have been overlooked for a while and this treatment is unacceptable. Although my wife kept apologizing, I made it clear that I did not accept her apologies. Most of the apologies felt insincere, such as her initial apology of, "I'm sorry you feel that way." They seemed forced, as if she was only saying what she thought I wanted to hear. Actions speak louder than these empty words. I also emphasized that my wife's behavior sets an example and establishes expectations for how I should be treated, as well as how our daughters will perceive and treat me in their future relationships. At this point, I believe my wife regretted involving the kids in our conversation. While my 14-year-old took my 11-year-old to get some snacks, my 17-year-old stayed with us. I directly asked if there was anyone else involved, if she was cheating physically, emotionally, or otherwise. The question caught her off guard, and she appeared shocked. She vehemently denied any infidelity. I questioned why she had been so insistent on having sex with me back in February. My daughter had left the room by this point, when it had been much longer since we were intimate. I asked why every aspect of our romance had deteriorated within a year from her side. She had no answer. We continued our conversation for an additional 20 minutes. At that point, I took out 2 folders that I had brought with me. One contained a separation document, a step towards divorce. The other contained referrals for individual and couples therapists. I wanted to convey the seriousness of the situation and asked her to review the information and consider what she wanted. However, I made it clear that she had to make the decision and schedule the appointments herself. I explained that I refuse to continue living in this manner, and if she chooses to stay with me, significant changes need to occur in our relationship and our home. I still love the woman I married, the mother of my children, and the partner with whom I built a life. However, I feel like I have lost sight of who she has become. My kids returned, and my 11-year-old was upset that I wasn't going back home with them that night. I gave my wife some time to think. The following day, she contacted me and informed me that she had made appointments for herself and for us. She scheduled bi-weekly individual therapy for herself and our first couples therapy session for early next month. The reason for the delay was so that she could focus on herself first. I have been using the gray rock method towards her since the initial incident, as recommended by both you and our therapist. Overall, it's still a work in progress. I'm not in as dark of a place as I was when I first reached out. Some things have improved. I'm willing to put in the effort, but it cannot be one-sided. We have a plan moving forward, which is a positive step. I have been back at home for a week now, but I am sleeping in a different room. Some changes have already been implemented, but time will truly test the effectiveness. On a side note, on the second night of my return, my wife attempted to initiate sex, but I declined, explaining that it was not the appropriate time or place. We have many issues to work through before that can happen. As always, peace, love, and chicken grease. I feel like they would be happier without me. They already act like I don't exist. I can't be the one who is blamed for everything anymore. I can't do it. I keep going over and over in my head. If I was gone, then their problems would be solved. They could move on with a new dad/husband who they would love more than me, who they would show more love than they have shown me. I was the cause of everything that went wrong in their life. My wife probably has a replacement who could just step in and be a real dad and husband to them. Something snapped me out of it. It still sounds weird, but it was as if I could hear my 11-year-old. She has been the one who has made me feel loved, wanted, and cared for throughout most of this, both before and after I left. From what I now understand, my wife was pushing for them to give me space, but my youngest wouldn't accept it. She kept pushing for them to reach out, track me down, and find me. She had a weird feeling. I initially hid the fact that I was at the point of ending things from my therapist. After my last update, I told her. She could tell I wasn't as open with her until that point. That changed the tone of our sessions. I have a better understanding and more tools I can use to recognize and help deal with those negative and dark emotions. With that came some diagnosis. On to my wife. She did commit to her individual therapy. I started to see some changes in her. She has been treating me better. Things were going in a more positive direction. I still shut down forward advances from her. I found out her therapist was also telling her to stop and earn my trust, and that we had to rebuild up to that. But that makes her feel unloved and unwanted. Ironic. I looked into it to see if she was cheating, and I found nothing. No texts, messages, emails, unexplained expenses, weird locations, absences, photos, apps, nothing. So she is either really good at covering her tracks, or she didn't cheat. I expressed that if it ever came out that she did cheat on me, it was over. The first couple session was a long one. The first hour was individual with me, then my wife, then both of us. It was useful and helped, but not much. Same with the second session, which was 2 hours together. The third was a shit show. This was just after I opened up with my individual therapist about my self-harm thoughts. I just opened up to them and told them everything, where my head was at, my thoughts at the time, how close I came, what stopped me, how long I had thought about it, everything. My wife looked at me with a sense of horror. She looked at me and started yelling and kept repeating, "How could I, me, OP, be so selfish?" The therapist calmed her down and I started talking again. I went deeper into how badly my wife and kids hurt me. That there is no way she didn't know about Father's Day or my birthday. How I still suspect that she has been cheating on me. How the dark thoughts started after my mother passed away and my wife stopped being my wife. I don't know what happened to my wife. The woman I loved disappeared. She has been gone for a while. Checked out. My wife was loving, playful, honest, trustworthy, a fantastic partner, and the love of my life. I can't be with this stranger she became. I just went off and unloaded. The therapist said we needed a break to cool down and meet back in 5 minutes. I walked out. I know it was being immature, childish, and an move. When I cooled down enough, I saw I had a bunch of missed calls and texts. My 17-year-old ended up picking me up since my car was at home. It was the first time she saw me actively cry. I think that got her to understand how much weight was crushing me, how much their actions have caused me pain. We ended up parked somewhere and just talked. We talked for a long while, more than we had in a long time. I got more out of that conversation than I have in the last few years. We got back home and my other 2 kids ran to me and hugged me. Not just a side hug, but an actual hug. That felt so good. My wife approached me slowly and asked for a hug as well. I gave her half of one, and she started crying. We, as a family, hung out for a while, and when bedtime came around, my wife asked to talk. She did say that she thought she was losing me around when my mom passed, that I had checked out of our marriage, but didn't go into detail. She said she is still working through some things, and when she has a better understanding of herself, she will bring it to the table. She then broke down. She said that she really didn't know how bad it was. She is sorry, but vowed to do anything she can to make it up to me and be a better partner. She is trying. I do see improvement, but why did it have to get to this point? But now I'm so numb that I keep asking myself if she really meant that, or if they are just empty words. I don't know if that is the medication talking, or how I'm thinking nowadays. Some days I feel like my mind is like when an old TV has static because of bad signal. My kids overall are doing better. I still question the older ones sometimes, but I think it's me overthinking. School and activities are keeping them busy, but one thing that keeps bothering me is I can tell they are walking on eggshells around me. It bothers me. It's like I'm a jack-in-the-box, and they are waiting for me to pop out at them. Therapies is helping overall. It just takes time. My therapist said it is like I've been an actor playing a character for so long that I don't know how to be myself. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, but I feel the truth in it. I need to find myself first and then work on other relationships. My wife and I did go on a date. She planned it, and it was fun. I had a genuine smile. But in the back of my mind, I was wondering if this was for me or for us. I'm not sure what will happen in the future. Time will tell. And that's the story of a man who had to confront his deepest fears and face the cracks in his relationships. It serves as a reminder that open communication, understanding, and genuine love are the cornerstones of any healthy and fulfilling connection. Life is unpredictable, but with time, patience, and a willingness to change, there is always hope for healing and finding a way forward. In the midst of a strained relationship between my wife and her estranged son, a devastating phone call reveals that he is terminally ill with only a month left to live. Despite my urging, my wife refuses to visit him, torn between her own fears and unresolved emotions. As her husband, I grapple with the guilt of pushing her towards a heartbreaking decision. Here's how it all went down. My wife Sarah, 39 years old, has a son Vicky, 20 years old, from her previous marriage. Because of the way my wife and I got together, there was a lot of strife in her divorce from her ex, resulting in a difficult time for Vicky, who was only 8 years old at the time. For a few years, my wife tried her best and made every effort to help him, but it seemed that the more she tried, the more distant he became. The situation reached a breaking point when he was 12. My wife caught him trying to smoke, and when she intervened, he almost broke her jaw. After that incident, she decided to stop forcing custody and let him stay with his dad. When Vicky was 14 and we had our son, my wife sent him a message informing him about his baby brother's birth. She emphasized that even if he didn't want to be around her, it didn't mean he couldn't love his brother. Unfortunately, Vicky responded with a disrespectful phrase. She tried the same thing 3 years later when our daughter was born, but this time she received no response. Well, 2 days ago she got a call from her ex, and he was crying, and apparently Vicky is dying. He has cancer, and they found it very, very late, and he's optimistically only got a month left, and he's been begging to see her. So I've told my wife to go and spend the month with him. She can work online for a month or take a leave or just quit if they don't understand. However, she's refused. And she's used everything from work to needing to take care of our kids to even, what if it's just a trick to hurt me more, as excuses not to go. At the same time, she keeps crying, muttering about thinking she had more time, ignoring our kids, looking at old photo albums of her and Vicky. It came to a head this morning when I caught her having a breakdown in her car before going to work. I begged her to reconsider when I saw, and she called me a jerk for trying to push her into going. I know he's not my son, and I have no right over him, but not going is tearing Sarah apart. So am I the jerk? To clarify for everyone who is confused, there were more than just 2 instances when my wife reached out to ask if he was ready to see her. The only time he responded was when our son was born. She continued to try reaching out until his graduation, even with his father's encouragement to invite her. She sent him money, presents, and everything for his birthdays. Regarding the incident when he struck her at the age of 12, he used a hockey stick and kicked her when she fell. She forgave him because she understood what he was going through, and he is her child. However, she decided to stop seeing him at that point because she didn't want her presence in his life to contribute to his violent behavior. She worried about the possibility of him harming another child in the same way. To those suggesting therapy, yes, she did take him to therapy and tried her best, but he was unresponsive at that time. My stepson Vicky passed away a week ago, and I feel the need to express my emotions and thoughts here as people were willing to listen before. After my wife came home on the day I posted, we had another intense argument about the situation. I felt like I couldn't get through to her, despite using some of the points that people in the comments had shared with me. I was surprised by her stubbornness. The argument ended with her screaming at me, claiming that her son wasn't sick, dying, or in any danger. I don't know if she was in deep denial or thought it was some kind of trick, but her screaming frightened our children. I felt it was best to let it go. A few days later, my wife received a call from a young woman claiming to be Vicky's wife. She begged my wife to come, and this prompted my wife to take action. Her understanding colleagues at work granted her time off until the end of this month. My relatives came over to help me with the kids, as my wife made it clear that she had to handle this on her own. She flew to where Vicky's family was staying, booked a hotel, and went to see him. She hasn't shared all the details with me as she only returned home 2 days ago. According to her ex, their son started behaving oddly around the time he graduated from high school. They didn't think much of it at the time, as he seemed more mature. They arranged his marriage in India about 6 months ago, with no objections. Her ex blames himself for not realizing that the change in behavior was due to an illness. My wife told me that they married him off because his wife is the only child of a wealthy family. What has caused my wife to cry repeatedly is that nobody informed her about her son's wedding. She keeps saying that if she had known he was sick, she could have saved him, and she should have been there. I agree that her ex deserves blame because her own relatives don't communicate with her. She doesn't use Facebook, and she had a right to know. Regarding her daughter-in-law, my wife only has positive things to say. She is studying engineering at the University of Alberta and is currently pregnant. This brings my wife some hope. She believes that a part of her son is still alive through his wife, and I'm glad they can support each other. As for the details about my wife's son, she hasn't shared much with me. She mentioned that he was sad, kept apologizing for his behavior and forgetfulness, and that his condition made her feel like he was already gone before she arrived. She did tell me that he passed away in her arms while she was praying, so I hope that means they were able to reconnect. I understand that she may not want to share this with me, but it frustrates me. I have always wanted my wife to have everything she desires, and I know that having her son back is what she wants the most, as he was her heart. Now she can't have that. It's not like losing an estranged parent or sibling. He was her son, and she gave birth to him. I see her crying and saying it should have been her, and it honestly angers me. All I can do is be there for her, but I feel like I shouldn't have to be, as her son shouldn't have had to die so young and tragically. By sharing this heartbreaking story, I hope we can all reflect on the importance of family, forgiveness, and the preciousness of time. Life can take unexpected turns, and it's a reminder to cherish our loved ones while we have the chance. I received a request for child support from a woman I've never met, and I knew something was deeply wrong. As a biological cisgender woman with no children, I couldn't comprehend how I was being sued for something I couldn't possibly be responsible for. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a twisted plot that would lead to a shocking revelation. Here's how it all went down. A few days ago, I received a notice from an attorney that I am being sued for child support from a woman I have never met or heard of. Context: I am a biological cisgender woman. I am straight. I have 0 children. I have never done surrogacy, egg donation, or even given birth or come close to it. I contacted the attorney listed on the document, a fairly well-known attorney around where I live, to make sure it was legitimate, and yep, it's legitimate. He stated that his client came to him to sue me for backdated and future child support for her 15-year-old, and stated that I am the biological father. The attorney had my name, address, and information like my birthday, where I went to high school, etc. yet somehow didn't know that I am a woman? The attorney also stated that the woman is in her 40s. They repeated her name to me and asked if I knew her. I responded by stating that I have never met or heard of her. I clarified that I am a biological woman who has never had a child. Furthermore, I raised the point that if I were a man and the biological father, she could potentially be in trouble for statutory rape, as I would have been barely 15 years old when the child was conceived, and she would have been in her mid to late 20s. The attorney explained that, as an attorney, they have a duty to follow through. They insisted that I need to meet with them, sign the documents, and undergo a DNA test to confirm any relation to the child. I informed the attorney that it is physically impossible for me to be the father. However, they remained adamant and instructed me to bring my own lawyer to their office tomorrow. I am unsure if I actually need to hire an attorney. Can I simply go to the meeting and assert that I am a woman who has never given birth and ask to be left alone? I am in need of proper guidance on what steps to take next. First, I will answer some questions. No, I do not have a masculine/gender neutral name. In fact, I have a very long and uniquely spelled feminine first and middle name. Yes, I have brothers. None of them have passed away, so I wasn't being sued in their place. They are all alive and well, and it is easier to get in touch with them than with me. I am not on social media, but they are very active on various platforms, such as LinkedIn, and have public pages. They can be easily found through a random Google search. Yes, I also have a father. However, he is not the one I was being sued for child support on behalf of. In the beginning, this woman stated that I didn't have any family at all. She told the attorneys, I can give him the family he's never had since he's been alone his whole life, referring to me as he. Even if one of my brothers was the father and we did a DNA test, which we didn't, there would still be no way to prove that I am biologically related to this child, as I am adopted. The only relation I have to my siblings is because my parents signed a piece of paper and picked me up from state custody. Additionally, if she were trying to set up the DNA test to prove a familial link to the child without the father present, she should have gone to my sister, who is biologically related to the rest of my adoptive family, as she was adopted from another family member. No, thankfully, I have not been a victim of identity theft. The person involved in this case was not posing as me. Fortunately, there was no attempt to change the paperwork from the biological father to the mother. Even in the documents presented by this woman's lawyer to my attorney, and the documents I received, it clearly stated that I was supposedly the biological father. Now, as to what happened, I went to the attorney's office with my attorney as he requested during our call yesterday. And guess what? The suit was dismissed. It happened very quickly. Thank goodness. I thought we would meet with a judge because that's how I assumed it worked, but we went to the lawyer's office and met with him and the woman who filed the suit. I got an attorney as I reached out to a friend who lives in my state, as a lot of his family are attorneys. One of the families where it's in their blood, basically. Turns out his aunt handles family cases. He got me in touch with her and we spoke. After I told her the situation, she laughed and said she'd do it pro bono just for the entertainment. Apparently, she knows the other attorney and says he's a jerk, so I guess that's a benefit for me since she was more than happy to represent me. We met with the attorney, showed my birth certificate, Idaho, passport, adoption papers, and my initial birth certificate prior to adoption, for good measure. The attorney was frustrated with his client, but very kind with myself and my attorney about it. He apologized for the inconvenience. The entire matter was dismissed. Initially, my attorney suggested obtaining an order of protection due to the woman's unstable behavior. During our encounter, she claimed that I had undergone a sex change to avoid child support, referring to me as he. She also asserted that I make more than enough money and that my income belongs to her and our child. However, we ultimately decided against pursuing a restraining order after she provided an honest explanation of how this situation arose. It turns out that she, myself, and my male cousin used to work together over a decade ago in the same organization. I worked a different shift in a different area of the building while she worked as a secretary and my cousin held a typical office job. Despite not having any direct interactions with them at work, I didn't even know she worked there. She had access to my information through the company's prior employee records. She became aware of my familial connection to my cousin, as he had mentioned that I was his cousin and also worked at the same place. To confirm this connection, she checked his Facebook profile where he had our family listed. Through this link, she discovered my cousin's father, who happens to be my uncle. My mother, who is listed as my cousin's sister-in-law, his CIL, was always my emergency contact, and therefore had access to my information as well. Based on this information, she believed that she could file a lawsuit against me, obtain a DNA test to establish paternity, and then use that connection to go after my uncle for child support. Her reasoning was that since my cousin is currently incarcerated and my uncle has a stable retirement income, he would be a more viable target. To be honest, I don't fully understand her thought process, as I am not familiar with the legal intricacies involved or whether her plan was even feasible. Additionally, she mentioned that she was recently fired, which prompted her to pursue this course of action. She knew of my cousin's incarceration and saw an opportunity to seek financial assistance by locating me through our shared last name and making copies of my resume and important information from my file. After all the drama and chaos, she eventually decided to give up the fight when she realized she couldn't win, especially after I presented documents that included my original adoption and birth records. This revelation made it clear that a DNA test would not support her claims. I apologize if this update isn't as exciting as you were hoping for. However, I am relieved that this ordeal is over. Ultimately, I hope she seeks the help she needs, but I will keep my distance and warn my family about her. I get that she is desperate, but she should have texted your cousin's dad and told him about the situation, and then went from there. It's unbelievable how far some people are willing to go for their own gain. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.